All right, hello everyone, Dakoba here, and welcome back to Bellwright. Today we're going to be building our Tier 3 town. That's going to be the main emphasis of today's episode, is to get as much of that town built as possible. Now, in order to do that, we are going to need to get our town hall constructed, which we have started staging up here. And once that is built, then we'll need to spend a bunch of time doing research into Tier 3 buildings. We aren't going to be able to do much Tier 3 construction until we are able to build some Tier 3 buildings. So what we are doing is we're staging the town hall up here, and then we'll do some research and start constructing buildings down at the location we chose last time. And once we have enough of a town up and running, we'll go ahead and move the town hall over there. Now you can see that we're up to about 65,000 renown. That's pretty good, but it's not nearly enough. So we're going to take our army and use it to clear out some of these bandit camps. In particular, I think this one here and that one there, these two right there, are going to be particularly dangerous for us. And we may also hit this one up that's guarding Krasmir, because those three camps, well, these two in particular, we have a quest for called the Burning Stove that will have us clear out those camps, and that's something we can make a point of doing. Once that quest is complete, then those two camps will contain people that we can liberate, that we can save and protect. Now, these two camps also contribute to roving patrols that do hit the area we've chosen for our town. I went ahead and scouted that out and confirmed that, so we are going to clear those out and take care of that. Now, if we want to liberate Horndian and Krasmir, we're going to have to clear more bandit camps around the map, probably finish clearing the map, save maybe one. We might want to leave one camp, possibly this big one down to the south, simply because it is beneficial to know where bandit raids are coming from. If you clear the entire map, then raids can spawn at the location of a destroyed camp and not necessarily a place you're prepared for. However, our first step here is going to be to make to continue working on our starter town a little bit more. In the last couple episodes, we have been creating districts that have greatly streamlined a lot of production for us. In particular, our resource gathering has gotten way faster and way easier, as well as our food production. However, we have a lot of vestigial stuff left over that we no longer need. So for example, if we're going to be relying on fish as our main food source here, we no longer need a campfire to cook. We no longer need a smoking rack to cook. And we no longer need a cooking pot to cook in our main settlement. These are all located within our cooking district, and we no longer need them out in the middle of nowhere. But I think the big thing is going to be to create a farming district, something that allows us to streamline our operations and logistics over here. Now, before we do that, there's other things we can do to speed things up. So for example, right now we currently have 5 farm fields. If we take a look at one of these farm fields, we can see all the crops we can grow. And we no longer have a call for beetroot. So we can go ahead and make sure that we are not going to be producing any beetroot. We do need flax. We need garlic. We need hemp. We do not need sage. We do need cotton. We don't need potatoes. And I think if we go through this list, we need flax, that's 1, garlic is 2, hemp is 3, cotton is 4, and wheat is 5. We have 5 fields. We need 5 crops. Let's make 5 monoculture crops. There's no benefit to crop rotations or anything in this game, so we can do that. So that first field will be a garlic field. This one will be a hemp field. We can go ahead and create a flax field and a cotton field over here. This one can be flax. And then this one over here can be for cotton. Now, one of the other challenges that we're going to face is that we're starting to fill up on storage with things that we don't really need. And so, for example, if we take a look at this barn down here, this thing is full of meat. We've got over 500 pieces of large raw meat that we are no longer cooking. We no longer have value for this. And this is an issue. I don't know what to do with this other than to just dispose of it in the outhouse, but that's not great. That's certainly not ideal. Double check this farm. I think wheat we want to be set as a priority. We want this to be our top priority. We want all the wheat we can get, and we're going to need to thresh that into straw. And so I think our next step is going to be to turn our farming town, our farming area into its own district in the same way that we did with gathering and the same way that we did with our fishing district. All right, it is the following morning, and we're going to start off today by setting up our farming district. And today and I think this time we're going to do things a little different. So far, we've been working on Route 1. I do want to highlight a change I made to that. Here at the outset plane stop, originally we were loading fish at the fishing district. We have switched that over to unloading or having a top-up order, let's say top-up order, to 200 each of the different fish products at our primary settlement there. And that should allow us to easily distribute those, but hopefully not overload on storage. Overloading on storage is a major concern at this point because we are reducing the number of different goods that we're needing, but there's a lot of extra stuff. So for example, the meat we looked at last night, we've got 550 meat. That meat is not going to stop coming in. We just don't have a place to store it. Oh my gosh, look at all the treasures we're getting. Let's go ahead and open these up. We get tons of coins, fish scales, tons of gold. Like, look at all the gold we're getting. Almost 2,000 gold there. That was fantastic. Tons of coins, tons of fish scales, tons of pearls, few straps. Very solid. But preventing that kind of excess resource buildup is going to be necessary for us if we're going to leave this settlement for the long term, because ultimately there's no mechanism that will clear out unwanted items. There's a little bit with food because food will spoil and you can set up something that'll turn it into fertilizer, but then eventually the fertilizer will back up. That's just sort of kicking the can down the road. And also the way food spoilage works in storage, it will be a very, very slow process. If we take a look at this, for example, we've got this stack of 200 and smoked fish fillet. One of those is spoiling every day or so. It's a very slow rate of decay. The issue is that our hunter's camp will eventually back up and not be able to hunt anymore. And if we rely on the pelts and hides, then we need a way to deal with the meat. Now to start off our farming district, let's go ahead and add a new caravan. Now, I was thinking about doing this with the route we currently have, but we are so behind on unloading the items from our various districts that I don't think that's going to work out for us. I think we need to have a separate route for farming, and actually, now that I think of it, we might even want a separate caravan station and have that the logistics for that area be managed locally. Now that I think of it, let's give that a try. Let's try setting up another caravan station and managing our farms locally. So we can go ahead and start construction on that. So we'll need another small caravan station back here. All right, and taking stock of the amount of work, I think we're going to want at least 2 farmers, 1 craftsman to craft the wheat into straw, and 1 logistics person. I think that's probably good, but we may need to recruit another farmer here. But let's go ahead and start reassigning some of these buildings. So this small caravan station will switch settlements to a new settlement, new outpost, and we'll call this one Outset Farms. We will switch this barn We can switch the farm here over to Outset Farms. We'll switch this stockpile over to Outset Farms. We will switch our thresher over to Outset Farms. We will switch our well, which is going to have to be done from the building menu. Switch that over to Outset Farms. Now that may cause an issue over for our mixing bucket, because I think we use water for making, maybe making cob, maybe making fish bait, I'm not sure, but I think we use it over at the mixing bucket. So we may need another well for our last farm. And then this settlement, we can kick people out, switch this one over to Outset Farms, and now we can reassign some people here. Let's go to our Outset Plains, take a look at our population, and take a look at our work attributes. Now we know we need a farmer. We currently have, I think, just one master farmer here. Yeah. So Pavel Clifton, you are absolutely going to switch over to Outset Farms. You're going to prioritize farming. You're not going to do crafting. Another building we're going to need to switch over is our Forester's Hut, which is a farming building. So we'll switch that one over to Outset Farms as well. All right, going back to our population though, we're going to need a crafter, someone who can be a master crafter. We do not want to give up our skilled professionals, although if we have to, we can. So that should be the basis for the farming, all done. All right, and then the last thing we're going to need is to set up logistics for this. But I want to get that caravan station built first. And that's something we can help out with, since we kind of may have jumped the shark on that and constructed that before we were otherwise ready. In our main town, we said we were going to need another well. Let's go ahead and build a well. And this is basically at this point entirely for this mixing bucket. So let's go ahead and just construct this one right here next to the mixing bucket. All right, small caravan station is finished. Let's go ahead and manage this one. And here we'll add a route that stops at Outset Plains, and we'll unload flax. We'll unload, we're gonna want to unload straw. We're gonna want to unload hemp. And then the wheat will actually keep locally. But I think that's everything we will be unloading there. And then here we will unload fish. Build fish fillet, smoked fish fillet, and fish stew. Do top ups on all of these. Make these all top up orders as well. I think that should do it. So as soon as we get a cart, there should be a job there, but we're also going to need someone who can fill that role. Someone who doesn't otherwise have a job. When Renfried, I want you to be the cart carrier for Outset Plains. Now we're taking our cart carriers from our main settlement, and one of the reasons it's okay to do that is that we don't need them at the main job we had anymore, where we're doing these supply caravans to the nearby towns. I think we're in a position where we can peel those back. So let's head down to our caravan station and market and clean up that part of our logistics as well. And I think straight away we can immediately say we are no longer going to be running Bradford Supply, Herndon Supply, or Padstow Supply. We can just disable those. Now the Padstow Supply is one that we might regret because we were buying a lot of resources from them, but it's fine. We no longer need it. And actually, I think we can even delete these routes once they're sort of inactive. However, we don't want to completely alienate those towns. We do want to stop selling cob for sure. We can probably sell off all the other excess stuff we have. We want to stop selling flax. But otherwise, we can come into our marketplace, take a look at the trade trades that are requested by these towns and set up trade orders for them to make sure that they are not sort of finding themselves in a bad position here. And so Farnworth, where we hadn't actually established trade with, we can see they're quite in a dire position. Let's go ahead and see how we can help them out. They need short swords. So we've already set up trade routes for those. They also need cob and thatch, which we aren't really willing to trade at this time. And then Blackridge Pool, who we just liberated, is also hurting pretty bad and is also looking for some of those same ingredients. But we might be able to provide them the peasant clothes and plank shields. Let's go ahead and set up those work orders. And so we can rely on our marketplace to make sure that the nearby towns are being provided for. Now, I don't want to spend too much time investing in this because that's going to require us to, for example, continue crafting up weapons and armor when we're trying to transition to a different town. And so I don't want that to be a major focus for today. Right now, I want to focus on getting this town operating smoothly and efficiently. And that really means cutting out a lot of the excess there. All right, it is the following morning. And while we are waiting on our buildings to get constructed, I think I'm going to head down to Krasmir and scout out this road, build a travel sign closer to town, because there's main story quests are going to take us through Krasmir. That's going to be how we get to the end of the main story. And let's head on over and see how close we can get to Krasmir. Now, Krasmir is an interesting town. It is very well defended by bandits, which makes it kind of a pain to get to and work with, but it's actually really easy. The quests there are fairly easy, fairly straightforward. The bandits are a pain, but we should be able to just outrun them right now. I did not bring any extra food with me, so fighting is probably not real high on my priority list at the moment. But it does look like our town, based on the item feed, is running efficiently, which is awesome to see. Now, Krasmir also has that building directly in front of us out there in the woods. That is full of bandits, and it's not marked on the map. It's not like a normal bandit camp or settlement. It's just a place that's full of bandits that respawns. And I'm not really sure what that's all about, but it is something to at least be sort of vaguely aware of. Let's go ahead and get our travel sign built. Do this right at the edge of town, close as we can. All right, now with that done, we can go ahead and carry on with our quests. And this quest is Burning Stove. Now, Burning Stove is a faction that fights against, Lord Ashburn and Queen Osen, independently of our movements. All right, so we got a couple of quests to recruit people. There's the Burning Stove Part 2 and Burning Stove Part 3. And that is going to be located at these two camps, which we want to clear out both of them. All right, now that we have those quests, I think we're good to move on these two camps in the south. So let's go ahead and rally up our reservist army. Now, I've separated out the ones who had stayed in Outset Plains from the ones who made the move down to South Beach. So we're only rallying the troops from South Beach, and we are going to march them south, and we'll take this camp, maybe this one, and that one. That's our goal for today, and we'll see how this goes. Now, the other thing I want to do is we've got a ton of renown. We're just sitting on a bunch of renown. I want to start spending it. It doesn't save us anything to just hold that in reserve. So let's go ahead and see if we can find some people who would be good candidates to join our settlement. And I think these will actually be the seeds of our new town. So I think this Helga Reynold here at Blackridge Pool will be a great first person to move into our city of Sanctuary. So welcome to the settlement. I'm going to have you move to Sanctuary and be a worker. There's currently no buildings in Sanctuary. All we have is a housing tent. So we can decide how we want to proceed with that from there. But we now have a laborer, and I picked her because she's also got really high potential for crafting and for animal handling, and is an excellent archer. So if we decide to go on a hunting route, she could be a food provider, but then can also fill into a number of other valuable roles. I think this Jacques Baker could be our next candidate. Really high harvesting and farming and crafting. So again, all of the sort of essential early game skills. So we'll have you also head down there. And then before we head out to join our troops and clear out these camps, we'll pop down and set up a couple of construction jobs so that we can start, having a proper settlement there. Now, I do want to have this town be independent and start working already. So I think what I'm going to do is place down some of these tier 1 buildings and then start recruiting in some high quality villagers, people who will want to have as part of our longer term settlement. But this way they can start gathering some of those very basic materials, things like logs that we're going to need a lot of, that are plentifully available in this region. And that way we can use those to get a jump start on building and construction projects. And if we can strike the right balance, then once we have finished constructing our town hall and started to do some research, when we unlock something like, for example, the windmill, we may be able to build the windmill on site and only need to bring down, some cob and some thatch, or maybe a couple of other sort of higher end materials. But a lot of the materials can be done locally, and all of the construction can be done locally for the first time, and we can streamline and save time there. Additionally, if we can get a couple storage buildings up, we might be able to set up some supply caravans to help out with that as well. So let's go ahead and place down some of these tier 1 buildings and then recruit a couple of people to get this town started. And then as we unlock some of the higher level buildings, we'll start putting those in too. Let's think about, how do we want to take this camp on? All right, we're going to have our troops stand back while we draw out the enemy, try and get them to chase and see if we can weaken them a bit, and then hopefully have them feed in one at a time. All right, that is a camp cleared out. Let's go ahead and loot at gold bars. That's nice. All right, so here we've got someone great strength, very good. Oh man, Briscoe Linton is excellent across the board, particularly though as a warrior. 9 out of 10 one-handed and 6 out of 10 shield, 7 out of 9 strength. You can be a worker at South Beach right now, but you will be a reservist there, and you will absolutely be a frontline warrior. All right, so that is one of the camps that was threatening our settlement. Let's go march on the other one. We won't have you charge all the way in straight away. Now, hopefully these remaining camps will be a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to clear out. All right, I don't see any good attack angles on this camp, so we're just going to bum rush and hope for the best. It's not nearly as large of a camp, nor nearly as well defended, though, so... All right, so Belinda Stone looks like she would be an excellent archer. Good strength, though, so it could be good. And again, really solid skills all across the board. So Belinda Stone will have you be a heavy archer. We'll assign you to South Beach. We can make you a reservist, but you can head back and be a worker for now, because we don't have weapons for you today. All right, we got one more encampment we are interested in taking down today, so let's pop on up and see what we can do with that. I don't like fighting at night, but looks like we've got a raid on the road we can clear out. Meantime, oh, these are brigands. This will be interesting. So we may have this cut short, but hopefully we'll at least get some decent renown out of it. Once again, we have the good fortune that all of these brigands are ranged, which makes them absolutely useless in a fight once you close the distance. Okay, yeah, so like, why is Thomas Fairman here? I mean, I'm glad he's tanking for me. All right, everybody go home. You've cleared the road. Everybody can go home now. That was just a rather frustrating day. But I've started, especially today, but in general, running into more and more issues where you really feel the early access of the game. So like I said, I had 2 crashes this morning, and one of those did give an out of video memory message. The problem with that being that I have a top end video card, and if this is the only thing running, and this was the only game running, for me to be running out of memory in that scenario is concerning. All right, we spent the night in Krasmir. Let's go ahead and turn in these burning stove quests, though. All right, and that got us to associate level with Krasmir, which is awesome. Let's head back up to Sanctuary and see how the camp is coming along and see what we can do about sort of progressing it a little bit more. All right, I've gone ahead and brought down the tin and set up a construction job for a pit saw at Sanctuary. They've also managed to finish off their second house, which means we can recruit a couple more people to come out here and help out. Otherwise, they've been hard at work doing some gathering, and the stockpile's starting to come together a little bit. So yeah, things are coming along. Things are looking good. Now, I'd like to transition our construction efforts over to focusing on buildings that are going to be useful in the long term. So, for example, we may want to build a marketplace so that we can start importing materials we can't gather locally. This is likely going to include a lot of the ores. There's not a whole lot of ore right at this location we've chosen. But it could also mean things like cured rope, which is actually a requirement for the market itself, or resin, or some other materials that we simply don't have on site at this time. We're also going to want to head back to our main settlement and start building up the production lines for cob and thatch, and really make sure that that is working well, because we're going to need a ton of it, not just for the buildings themselves, but also for researching new buildings and making sure that we're able to start really pushing construction on this town. All right, checking on construction for our town hall. It looks like all that's missing is cob and thatch, but looking around at the production lines for it, things are going well. We have basically a worker turning wheat into straw constantly. That's getting delivered appropriately. It's just going to take some time to build up the stockpiles we need. So what I might want to do next is pop back down to Sanctuary and actually set up some wheat fields down there and really focus on farming as our first major industry we want to set up there, because it's going to be such a critical part of building up new buildings. If we can set up something that allows us to build thatch, which is just made from wheat, so all we would need is the wheat fields and a thresher and a weaver's loom, then that would give us one of our building materials that's going to be used in every single building that we could produce on site. Now, it'll take, the better part of a season to get it going, but there's no harm in starting that now. We could also pair that with mud and water, and mud should be something we can get locally down there. Water comes from a well, also pretty straightforward, and that would give us the ability to produce cob. And so that's two of the three major components. The other ones we're going to be looking at are hardwood logs and planks, and then standard planks. And those are just going to require us to have a higher level lumber mill down there. And so that may be the first building we actually research, is the lumberjack building, or I think it's the lumber mill is the tier 3 version of it. And then once we get that up and running, if the farming side of things is also coming along nicely, we should be able to produce the vast majority of our materials on site and hopefully get our market up and running to get anything we don't need, or we can just bring it down from our starting settlement. Let's go ahead and get these wheat fields built up. And this could actually be the start of a wheat processing district for the entire town. In addition to producing the cob and thatch, which we need just to get things built, if we're able to unlock the windmill and bakery, then we can take that wheat, turn it into flour, and then into bread, which can act as one of the foodstuffs for the town. It can sort of be a multi-purpose role there. Now, we are going to need to get all of this stuff done, and I think we can pop on over to Blackridge Pool to look for another farmer we want to recruit. So let's go pick somebody up. And then we can real quick pop on over and deliver some grain to seed those fields, as well as a hoe, so he has something to work with. And then that'll probably be a day. All right, let's go ahead and get some sleep and see what we can do tomorrow to keep this town going. Looks like we'll need to deliver a few metal bits, as well as possibly helping out with some flax and things. But I'd like to get this town at least up and running pretty well today. I'd love to, for example, get enough buildings that we have like a level 3 farming district up and running, because that's one that could operate more or less independently, supposing we can provide the tools for it. So I think would be a good candidate for that. To that end, we'll probably need some mud, or a mud collector, and a well. Yeah, we might need to do some work here. All right, so let's settle in for another chill day of helping out around town. This is one of the things that I find really nice about the game. I think it needs a little bit better tuning or balance, but it's really nice sometimes to take 2 or 3 days and just do chores, build buildings, live in your city. And I think it's one of the things that makes Bellwright special compared to some of the other city builders. I'm a big fan of Manor Lords and have been for a long time. In many ways, it's a better city builder than this, but it's a different kind of game, and you don't have this kind of opportunity where you can personally walk around in the game, but you can't contribute to the town or sort of be among the people. All right, our town hall is finished. Let's pop on out and check it out. Oh, actually, the town hall, once it appears on the map, once we're close enough to see it on the map, there we go. It actually has a travel point with it, so we can fast travel to it rather than walking all the way over into that clearing. We can, of course, fast travel to the town hall. All right, now the town hall has the same town management interface that the cabin or personal buildings have. We also have our research workshop, which is our level 2 or level 3 researcher. And there is so much that we can research here, and we could really get started on this straight away. So we've got, for example, this lumber mill that we could build, which actually, let's go ahead and research that lumber mill. It'll be tricky to move all the stuff we'll need, but I bet we're up to the task. We can provide it. That'll let us get started with some construction and work. So we'll get that researched, and that'll probably take a day or two. I do want to make sure that we have the profession we need, though, before we go too crazy. So in this case, let's look at buildings, research workbench. We'll manage that. Let's prioritize this as a 1 because we want that. We need planks, nails, and rope. Let's deliver these items to the town hall and get this research underway, under construction. And we need 5 iron nails, which we should have plenty of. All right, well, that research will likely take well into tomorrow, so I'm actually going to take the rest of today to go work on a quest. We have a main story quest for the Sigil quest line in Blackridge Pool, so we'll need to talk to Amelie, and then these ones tend to be a lot of back and forth between Amelie and Herndon and, stuff in other towns. We could also... I did the math on it, and we have enough reputation token items that we could simply turn them into get to protector status with Krasmir and with Horndian when we get there. All right, we need to talk to Alex Amanita. And honestly, you know what? We have to go talk to him so much. I'm just going to go ahead and build a travel sign at his hut. I think that's something that we should have done right from the start. We come talk to Alex so much. Oh, wow, we got our lumber mill research much sooner than I thought. We got it tonight. Just fantastic news. So let's actually head down and get that placed tonight, and then we can go to bed and, have a sense for what we're going to need for tomorrow in order to actually get it built. So this one is a tier 3 building, our first tier 3 building. Oh, it's going to take 33 mosses. That's going to be interesting. We'll have to go gather that one by hand. The hardwood logs are also going to be tricky. We'll have to bring those in, and the planks. So we'll have to bring in basically everything here. We can't actually make any of this stuff locally, but I think it will serve us well to have this built and functioning locally. Place that one there. All right, and then we can go ahead and start research on our next building, which there's a lot of options. The mining pit could be a good choice. Let's do the windmill next, which should be another one that's fairly straightforward to research and will let us continue building up our farming industry. So we need thatch and wooden planks brought down here. So we'll be doing quite a bit of traveling with materials tomorrow, I think. All right, before bed, I did run out a bunch of new quests, or a bunch of new materials out to the construction site out there, and I will carry on doing that for today. All right, let's focus on getting this lumber mill constructed, because I think that can almost be an industry unto itself. You know, we provide the woods, and I think the lumber mill has everything it needs to do gathering of any kind of wood as well as processing. So this will be a huge help to this town. All right, it is the following morning, and we have a new quest, Bloody Prisoner, which I believe is one of the major story quests that has us take on the Brigand Prison. Now, that's a heck of a fight. Not one we're ready for, not even close. But I think we've got some other stuff we can do today and maybe start working towards that later on. Today, though, I want to take a look at, so the lumber mill needed mosses, 33 mosses, which are going to be pretty tricky for us to find as we don't have those being purchased. I think, yeah, we can buy them from Blackridge Pool, but I think in this case, it's probably worth us heading up into the swamp and just picking them up. We've seen them out there. We just haven't grabbed them. So let's pop on up there and see what we can find. I think I see some over under these trees. Yeah, right there. And so we can just go ahead and gather up the 33 we'll need and probably just fill our inventory as much as we can. All right, I've gathered up an inventory full of mosses, which should be plenty for this building and give us a little bit of a head start going forward. We'll also put in a purchase order from Blackridge Pool so that we don't have to keep coming out here to gather some up. We've got plenty of gold. We should be able to buy 50 or 60 and just keep them in storage until such a time as we need them. That will help make things go smoothly, but let's pop down to Sanctuary and deliver these to our woodcutters camp. If we can get that up and running, that should help a ton, because that will let us produce about half of the items that we'll need for most of these major building construction projects. If we take a look at this list, for example, we've got 33 mosses. That's pretty tricky. And then the cobs are also going to be challenging, but the hardwood planks and then hardwood logs, which we've already delivered, will also be more or less fairly automatic. I think it would also be beneficial for us to go ahead and start construction on a forester down here. And again, that's something that will take some time for us to actually get up and running, but we can go ahead and start building it up. And I think the rest of the day is going to be spent helping bring the materials, gather and craft and bring the materials down. We're going to need a ton of cob, a ton of thatch, and you can see in the item sort of production panel there that we're getting loads and loads of those down here, but it's going to be a while before we get everything we need. And we can certainly help by either assisting with production or by doing some transport and getting everything down there. Either way, though, getting this lumber camp built and making sure that our research into our windmill is our next step. I'd love to get the windmill up and running before spring, and then possibly the next building in line, the bakery, which is the other thing we'll be needing. So we can grab all the cob and thatch we need or have, and at least get that delivered. And then we'll take a look to make sure that our research is underway well. And then from there, we can figure out our next steps. All right, it is the end of the day, and we have managed to get all of the materials we need for the lumber mill. So it's just a matter of putting all the pieces together. We've also brought down a fair few materials for our forester. And so hopefully these buildings will be up and running before next spring. The forester, or the lumber mill rather, we can start working with immediately. The forester is going to require warm weather to work, but overall I think we're in a pretty good place there. All right, day 109 is here, and this will be the first day of winter, although winter hasn't set in yet. And I think we should take a look at what we're going to need to build a windmill, which is going to be a lot of thatch, a lot of hardwood logs and planks, some iron nails, and some cob. Now, the cob, I think we have all the material we need. The thatch, though, is just going to be a huge amount of wheat. And hardwood, we should be able to continue gathering through the winter season, so it shouldn't slow us down too much. But that wheat, we can't make our farms produce faster, but the wheat fields are still here and still regenerate. And I've thought several times about possibly coming up here and setting up an outpost that just harvests them and then ships the wheat out somewhere else. Seems like it might be one of the best ways to get wheat in the game. But for now, we can just pop in here and grab an inventory full of wheat to prepare for the winter. Now, you can't harvest wheat during the winter. You can't harvest any crop during the winter. And these do count as crops, despite the fact that they will regrow. But we can go ahead and harvest them out of here now. Just fill our inventory completely full. Because we're talking, 150 or so wheat in order to make the thatch we need for the windmill. And that's just a huge amount. Now, I believe our inventory is 54 slots. So obviously we can't get all of that in one trip, but every little bit is going to help. And we do have the threshers that will continue working basically at full tilt. We could even start producing some of this down at Sanctuary if we drop this wheat off down there. Because we do have a thresher built, this seems like the best way to make use of the sort of time-sensitive materials is to gather up this wheat for the construction of a windmill soon. And as a quick side note, if you have companions, you can actually bring them out here to the wheat fields and order them to harvest. So it would not be, if we really wanted a lot of wheat, we could sort of muster our army to come up here and then just give the order for everybody to harvest wheat, and they would pick this field dry. We could then deliver that to wherever we wanted, and that's something I've done before. And I would do that here. I just don't think we have time to do that before winter sets in, which should be later today. All right, and our bakery research is also complete, which is fantastic news. Which means I think we can go ahead and actually set up construction sites for all of our remaining buildings in our wheat processing district. Now, it's possible we will also want an apiary down there to give us some honey, which is used in a number of baked goods. So I think we can go ahead and start research on that. Now, that's going to require an apprentice farmer, and we don't currently have one in this settlement. So we might go pick one up who will live here long enough to do that research, and then once we're ready, move them down to Sanctuary. The apiary might be the only tier 3 building that requires a farmer. Let's head down to Sanctuary and actually start laying out this district, though. I'd love to be able to just bring down materials over winter and watch it sort of get constructed, come to life. And now that we have all the buildings we're going to need, I think we can do just that. Let's start by running a road through here. And I think we can have this road run right in front of these farms. And then over here, we can place in our windmill. And then I think on the opposite corner, oh, I guess we'll want a well over here as well. So we can go ahead and set up a well. Then we'll need a bakery. Now, the last thing we're going to need over here is some storage. which for now, we will probably just rely on the town's general storage, but we'll want to build a warehouse once we have room for it. So that's something that will need to be researched, but for now we can start with construction on these buildings. All right, we'd made a small mistake with the caravan station providing for our outset farms in that we were not providing the tools. So this has actually caused tilling to come to a standstill because we ran out of hose in outset farms. So I've gone ahead and set a top-up order for that to 1. So we'll always just make sure there's 1 being delivered so that the fields here in our starting settlement can be re-tilled and replowed over and over again so that we don't run out of tools again. All right, now winter did eventually set in, and so we spent it delivering materials and helping out with construction on the new farming district in Sanctuary. We helped out with the lumber mill.
What do you think those dots in the sky are?
We also helped out with the barn and the windmill. Additionally, I decided to pick up a worker from Farnworth who is an exceptional laborer and can help a ton with construction, but also is a good cook and so can fill that role in the new settlement once most of the construction tasks are completed.
Come closer.
I wouldn't have grabbed her if we didn't have a job for her after construction is done, but since we do, welcome to the settlement, Elizabeth Cooper. For now, we'll set you to a construction priority of 1 and have you live in Sanctuary. Now, winter being a traditionally unproductive time, I decided to raise my army and have them work on some bandit camps in order to help provide some renown for us. Now we're reaching a point in the game that is one of the places where I am going to go ahead and bring in a mod, and that's going to be something that will allow me to boost the amount of renown I'm getting. We're to the point where we're looking at between 6,000 and 10,000 renown to recruit a new villager, and that is fairly balanced if you're operating within the confines of a single settlement that is also presenting as your militia. But I like having different groups do different things, having multiple different towns around the map. And I would say that this is one of the cases where I don't like the balance in the game so much, is the fact that we have to, number one, tie the recruitment of new villagers to combat. I wish that that if I wanted to recruit a new villager, that could be done by some other method than having to clear out bandits and brigands to get renown and then use that as a currency to recruit people. And then the balance of that is also really tricky. And I understand that there's a gameplay balance to it, because if I were to rally every single villager that I have, I could have an overwhelming army that could probably just sweep the remaining brigand strongholds and defeat Lord Ashbourne without any trouble and all of that. Now, I'm not equipped for that. You know, there's more work to be done before I would be able to do that. But that's also not how I'm playing the game. You know, I've got my army at my army garrison settlement. I've got my starting village that's providing sort of an industrial backbone, and I've got my new village that I'm building as sort of the city building part of the game for me, the one of the main reasons I'm playing. And that is something that I'm not sure was really intended design for the game, and the result is that the renown system is just really heavy. So I'm going to go ahead and reload in with a mod that will boost renown by, and you can see the full list of things that I've used here. These are all available on the Steam Workshop, but we'll be using the Bandit and Brigand Renown Overhaul times 25 mod. That's going to give us just a huge boost to the amount of renown we get without affecting any other part of the game, so that each kill will essentially give 25 times the amount of renown. And that's just going to essentially eliminate renown as a limiting factor in how we are able to recruit villagers, which is the point of it. You know, like I said, we've reached the point in the game where that's not something that I find to be an interesting challenge anymore. And so let's just make it so that if we want to recruit a villager, we can. We'll wait for our troops to rally, and then we'll march on this camp and take a look at what that looks like. Now, this only affects renown gains from kills, not from liberating camps, defeating raids, placing down trophies, things like that. So there may be other ways to balance this, but this is the one that I'm going to use right now. It looks like we have a bandit patrol coming in from the north, so we should be able to demonstrate this pretty effectively here in just a moment. And there we go. So just clearing a few bandits and we're getting thousands of renown here, which is the intent here. And I want to be clear that to this point, all of the gameplay has been vanilla. I haven't been running any mods up until this point in this particular playthrough. I've kept them disabled, and Steam has that feature where you can launch the game without mods, so that's just what I've been doing to make sure that none of them are running. All right, now during winter, we managed to actually finish construction on our lumber mill as well as on our storage barn here in Sanctuary. And the lumber mill is awesome because it has 2 pit saws in it. So I managed, and so hopefully we will see a nice boost to our incoming items there, because hardwood logs in particular are something we're going to want a lot of because they are going to be used in most of our buildings. Now, the other buildings we managed to research over winter were the apiary, which we can go ahead and set up. And this is something that we're going to want over near our farms, right next to our well on this side, right across from the bakery. And then we've also finished construction on the inn, and this is something else I want to get under construction straight away, because the inn will act as a high-level house. It'll also bolster town morale massively. So let's go ahead and build our inn. And then last but not least, we have our warehouse, which is our top-level storage container or storage item. Right, my character seems to have been stuck in his building loop after we finished the apiary over there. That's fine. Building one such part on another structure did it. Overall, construction is going really smoothly here. We're almost done with our windmill. We have our apiary done. Well, that's going to require sage in order to start producing honey. We might be able to pick some of that up. I don't know if there's any growing nearby, but it shouldn't be too hard to come by. We can certainly get some over at our other settlement. And we also have all of the materials to start construction on our inn. They've all been delivered. We're just waiting on the work, which of course we can help out with. We're going to go ahead and finish up the windmill first, however, and that's going to do something important for us. See, one of the side goals I have for today is to get bell towers built in both Krasmir and Horndian. Now, Krasmir is going to be quite easy. We're already almost at friend, and we have the coins, the old coins, to get us to protector status immediately. We can just simply go down there and do that. If we don't want to use old coins, we have fish scales that is enough to get us to protector status with both Horndian and Krasmir from our fishing hut. So we are in a great place in that regard. And don't really need to worry too much about doing quests or anything to get the rest of the reputation we need with, or trust we need with those towns. However, and these are just continuing to roll in, so I don't feel any hesitation with looting them. If we open this up, you can see we've got 23 more coins here, 134 scales. And if we open up these bags, then we got 2 more coins and another pearl there. We can go ahead and fill that up. And let's just go ahead and pop down to Krasmir and get that one up to protector status and start building the bell tower there, because that's going to be the basic idea. Now, Horndian is going to be a little trickier because you can't turn in reputation items there until you've completed your first quest for the town. And that quest is to deliver 5 flour. Now, 5 flour needs to be made at the windmill. And so we are going to be waiting until we have that windmill done. We will process some grains into flour, turn those in, and as soon as that's done, we'll be able to then boost Horned In to protector status as well, so that we can build a bell tower there. We're not going to be liberating these towns yet. I think we need to boost our army a bit more, and I'd like to get them equipped with the sort of late stage weapons and armor before we do that. But that's something we'll be saving for our next episode. I'd just like to get the bell towers built today. All right, and there we go. That is protector status with Krasmir. And so we should now be able to come in here and set up the village bell tower to be constructed at the villager's leisure. And we can set that up right outside. All right, and our windmill is done. Fantastic. That is great news. It means that our villagers can start working on the inn and the warehouse now, which are both very exciting. Will be glad to see finished. Let's go ahead and process up some flour, though. In order to do that, we're going to need to make some grains. And then we can take those grains over to the windmill in order to process them into flour. We got 30 grains, so we turn 10 wheat into 30 grains. If we bring this on over here to the windmill, then it takes the 30 grains and should produce 5 flour. So it's basically 2 wheat to 1 flour is the sort of rate of exchange there. All right, it is the following morning, and we are on our way down to Horned In to reach protector status there, or at least get as close as we can. We have brought our 5 flour with us, so we should be able to find the village elder and turn that in order to unlock basic reputation trading with him. Come on over here and chat. Yeah, so he says they're running low on supplies, and they need flour and will reward us with gold. Well, fortunately, we happen to have 5 flour. We can take those. And now that makes us an associate. And when we talk to him, we have the sell menu here. So we can go ahead and sell the reputation items we brought. All right, and that has given us protector status with Horned In. We can go ahead and build our bell tower here right at the front gate. And then for the rest of the day, we're going to turn our attention back to getting this farming district set up. Now that we have the windmill done, we can focus on getting the inn, warehouse, and bakery done. Once those are all in place, we will recruit a few more people and set up all the logistics in order to get this part of our new town running. All right, our town is now sort of fully complete, or at least the farming part of it, or rather the wheat processing part of it, really. We'll have to do some additional farming later, but we've got our inn up, we've got our windmill up, our bakery is set up. If we take a look in here, we can see we can have some bread. And let's go ahead and set up a top-up order here. Now, this process is more or less ready, or rather this district is more or less ready. And I've gone ahead and recruited people for each of the key jobs. Some of them are still making their way in. They're walking from across the map, so they're not here yet to start working. But we have all of these jobs. We can set up a order for flour here. And so we have our 2 wheat fields, we have our thresher, we have our mill, and we have our bakery. So this should allow us to create a stable, sustainable food source. We will farm the wheat, we will thresh it into grains, we will mill the grains into flour, and then flour and water are the ingredients for bread. Now, bread is not an ideal food source, but it is something that we can mass produce and can be used as in conjunction with other things we'll add in later. So for example, we'll want to probably build a hunter's lodge here in a little bit. Let's make sure we got a top-up order for grains here, though, to make sure that we keep plenty of those on hand. And then we also have our warehouse here, which can hold 10,000 items. So we're doing fantastic there. We'll have plenty of storage. Now, I've ended up recruiting 6 new people here, and they are living at the inn, which can house 10 settlers. And the inn will probably move out of this district once we are ready to expand, but for now, we'll just sort of keep the entire town as one unique thing. This will stretch our villagers a little bit, though, they may divide their time between working at the windmill and the pit saws over on the other side of town, which isn't ideal for logistics, but until we can justify having multiple districts and enough people to establish caravan routes to distribute goods, I think this is going to work just fine for us. And I think that's where we're going to leave it for today. We now have our tier 3 town up and running, even if it's still a bit bare bones at the moment. We've got housing at our inn, we've got our first major production chains, and it is self-sufficient with food production and with a decent late game food item. Not the best, but something. And so I think we're in a really good place. In our next episode, we will go ahead and take a look at what we will need to do to challenge Lord Ashbourne to clear the rest of the map of bandit camps and liberate Hornian and Krasmir. And I think that's going to start with setting up another production district, making weapons and armor to bring our army into the late game. Once that's done, we'll be able to equip our troops, lead them on the final clearing of the land, and then sort of finish out the game. So I think that will be our last episode, unless something happens or changes, or if you guys want to see something specific, let me know down in the comments. But I'd like to thank you guys for spending a few minutes with me here in the world of Bellwright. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Leave a like if you have, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. My name is Dakoba, and I hope you have an epic day. I will see you soon.